Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. Hit me with a thumbs up if you can hear me. I'm not sure if the mic is on right. Something's going on with the phone, but happy Christmas Eve, everybody. Happy Christmas Eve. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope everybody still got some money left over. Hasn't spent all of their coins on things you don't need. Hopefully you just got a couple of things and didn't overextend yourself, and considering, the financial straits that or dire straits that everybody's currently in, and the future being so unknown that everybody's actually holding on to a little bit of their money. Don't go out there rushing to buy things that you can get next week or the week after for $200 or $300 cheaper than they cost today, just to be able to make somebody happy. The people will be happy that you're present, I promise you. And the gift does not have to be one that's so financially consequential. Happy holidays, Davis. Happy holidays. But there's a lot going on. I just wanted to speak on a situation that happened yesterday. I won't go too in depth to the specifics of it because those are still being worked out. There's so many questions and other things that need to play themselves out, so we won't speak on that. But there was a tragedy yesterday involving a bus and a bike, and the tragedy unfortunately cost somebody their life, and we want to absolutely send our condolences and our prayers to the family of the person who passed away. I believe the person was 33 years old, extremely young, extremely tragic, very, very sad. And also say a prayer for our brother who's suffering from the immense trauma of being involved in something that affected somebody's life. That as a bus operator, that as a train or a motorman or a conductor or anyone in any capacity of public service where somebody's life is affected, that is never a burden you would want to carry with you through your life. And there's no reconciliation with that. There is no reconciliation with that. There is never going to be a day that either one of those people's lives will ever be the same. And how they navigate that is extremely painful. And I would never want to put myself in either one of those people's shoes or their family's shoes. So we say a prayer for everybody, especially the night before Christmas, especially throughout the holiday season. To have to face this tragic incident is something I guess we can all agree just requires an enormous amounts of prayers and support for all parties involved. That is the spirited part. There's another part that makes me extremely angry. And the part that makes me angry is how these circumstances and these situations can be avoided or prevented or minimized or reduced. We, as specialists at our tools, we as masters of our craft, assume an enormous amount of responsibility in the course of doing our jobs every day. The standards that we are held to are higher than the standards of anyone in any industry throughout the country. I want to speak about buses specifically because it seems as if we are at the mercy of every rule and policy that the city and the city council approve when they're trying to pander to their donors and the people that they're afraid of. this is extremely important. The mayor of New York City approved the law that allowed e-bikes now to be legal everywhere. So you would think that when someone makes a law and they approve something, that there's been enormous amounts of studies that went into place and identified the way to make something legal and find the safest standards for that to be legal, to be applied to the actual approval of the law. Now, as we know in transit or in buses specifically, we have a responsibility to be forthright, to overthink for the people who are going to make mistakes. This is our specialty. In the course of our day, we overcompensate for people's irresponsibility. If a person runs across a red light, we have to be aware that that person's about to jump off the curb and anticipate it. Unfortunately, in trains, you don't get that luxury. You pull into a train station, person jumps in front of the train, there's no stopping. At that point, bad day. In buses, we save so many lives throughout the course of a day that people, if they had to give out awards for heroics, would have to give bus operators an award every 12 seconds. You can go through any spectrum, any specific part of the city, be it whether you're driving the M5 or the M4 or a bus past Rockefeller Center at Christmas time when 1 million people are walking in the street, whether you're driving down Church Avenue or Coney Island Avenue, or you're going around the bend at Stillwell, or you're coming down West Brighton, or you're going through any specific part of our city, navigating it, parts of Fresh Pond, parts of Flushing, parts of Queens, parts of Staten Island, everywhere there is a human being, walking, riding a skateboard, roller skates, jogging. And keep in mind, as a bus operator, you're not only responsible for what's outside of your bus, you're responsible for what's inside. If somebody falls down on your bus, that's considered an incident. You're responsible for that. You're responsible for not only protecting the public inside, but outside. And then you're also responsible for protecting your license away from work. So on your day off, you have to make sure that you're adhering to all the policies and standards of CDL law and everything that governs your license. So all of that to say, and not to lose point, it's just to summarize the enormous amounts of stress and responsibilities that are placed on a bus operator in New York City, and specifically in New York City Transit. And this is why we have so many tracks which we have to actually navigate to protect ourselves from being abused by management. There's one increase that has not been addressed. There's one increase in hazards that actually are now putting us directly in the line of failure. We are being set up to fail. We are being set up to fail. By the approval of the e-bike law and by the no regulations, zero regulations on e-bikes. Let's be very clear and have a conversation about what actually an e-bike is. It is a motorcycle with pedals. It is a scooter that resembles a bike. It is not a modified bike. Let's be very clear. When I'm at a red light with the bus and an e-bike zooms past me, the speed camera goes off. The speed camera, which is set to go off at 35 miles per hour, goes off when an e-bike flies past me. When they run through red lights, the cameras, the red light cameras, blip off. So they are constantly throughout the course of every day violating the laws of the road. Now, let's be very clear. They're not driving in a bike lane, because in the bike lane, they make it dangerous for people who are actually operating bikes. You can't go 40 miles an hour where someone's going 8 miles an hour on a bike. They'll bang into them and kill them. I want to know, what's the data? What is the statistics on how many accidents and incidents have been created or generated by e-bikes, by electric bikes, by motorized bicycles? aka scooters, aka motorcycles. How many people have they crashed into? How many accidents have they caused? How many times have they injured themselves in the course of a year? Where's the data? Where's the studies that are attached to that were presented when the mayor decided that it would be a good idea to give them an open rule to the city and make it a legal law for them to operate without impunity? Where is the accountability from the mayor's office for the rest of the citizens of New York that might become a victim of an irresponsible e-biker? Who governs that? Who says that the person riding this e-bike isn't blind? How do we know the person riding the e-bike doesn't have a medical condition that prevents them from being able to operate that 45-mile-an-hour hazard safely? What is the stopping distance on an e-bike when the brakes are this small that are intended for a bike are trying to stop an e-bike that's going 45 miles an hour? Well, we know what's time and distance for a vehicle. We know that it takes 8 seconds to stop at the speed of 100 feet at 60 miles an hour or whatever it is, relative to how fast you're going, time and stopping distance. What is the time and stopping distance for an e-bike? How long does it take to stop an e-bike that's going 45 miles an hour? I'm going to tell you, they cannot stop. Watch them. Anyone who's been in New York City watches those delivery guys when they zoom in through the street and they come to an intersection and try to stop. They cannot stop. What laws are in place to protect us, the general public, from them? Why is my insurance on my car go up every year to adhere to the hazards that are more prevalent in the inner city or me operating in the inner city? But yet these people have no responsibility. There's no mandate for insurance, and none of us are protected in the event they cost one of our lives. If an e-bike crashes into my car, I have to call my insurance company? Because he doesn't have insurance? Because he's not regulated by a government that just allowed him to operate without impunity? You cannot imagine the hazards that these bikes cause when you are operating a bus. Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, we are intended to operate to service bus stops, which means we are constantly swinging to our right, where the e-bikes like to ride on the side of the bus. So we're all going in the same direction, except we are operating with rules and regulations, and they are operating trying to get 40 calls for Uber so that they can deliver as fast as they possibly can and have no consequences to whatever hazards they might create or cause. So, nobody thinks in our industry that we are lying. Everyone is in agreement that these hazards are very real and dangerous. So then what happens? Who protects us? What happened yesterday? Where is the people who are tasked with protecting us, our rights? And by no means is this intended to be insensitive to the loss of life of the person who succumbed last night to the tragedy. But this tragedy falls on the doorsteps of many, not just the few who are directly engaged in this interaction. This consequence goes to the mayor and it goes to our union. Where was the press conference last night from our VP and buses and TA Surface? Where was the energy? Where was the protection for the member who was traumatized, who had to fill out a statement by himself at the depot last night and find his own way home? He had to find his own way home at 2 o'clock in the morning. I want to cry right now. I want to cry. I'm looking at it from my own perspective. don't want to be in that situation. So I'm empathetic to the plight of anyone who's involved in that situation. Some things are not political. Some things are just black and white. Some things are right and wrong. What's wrong and what's right? What's wrong is the fact that these bikes are able to do whatever they want with no consequence. And anytime we get involved in anything, the consequence becomes ours. Whether right or wrong or indifferent, we are going to suffer the burden, and we have to defend ourselves from tooth and nail for our livelihoods, for our freedom, for our safety, for our licenses, and for our mindset. We have to overcompensate for failed leadership on all levels. We should not have to be apologetic for someone or an industry who panders to the governor or to the mayor and line their pockets with money. The real reason there's no regulations on e-bikes is because businesses, restaurants, stores make enormous amounts of money from using these delivery men and being able to accommodate more service because the e-bikes can deliver a lot faster than vehicles could. So because an industry thrives off of their deregulation, they then pad the pockets of the mayor and the governor for them to turn a blind eye and let the rest of society deal with the consequences. And what is the outcome? A dead 33-year-old and a bus operator who for the rest of their life will probably never be able to see things the same ever again when they walk outside their door. Every time they hug their children, kiss their wife, or go to church, they're going to have a compromised state of mind because in their mind, they took part. They were engaged or they were present for the loss of someone's life when all they did was wake up and came to work and try to make a better life for themselves. So we're not attaching blame. We're not attaching liability. We're just identifying the circumstances of a situation that led to two horrible outcomes. We don't know the facts, the specifics. Here's a fact. E-bikes are dangerous. That is a fact. E-bikes are dangerous, they're unregulated, and our union needs to be doing more to make sure that we are protected. What is one way to be protected? Mandating that anytime a driver is anytime a driver gets involved into a fatality or an incident that can lead to the loss of life, criminal charges, or affect their job, they should have at least, like PD, 2 days, 72 hours, 24 hours, 36 hours, 19 hours, pick a number, before they're forced to issue a statement. How can someone who's just involved in a fatality give you an accurate depiction of the circumstances? They can give you a reflection, but if they're traumatized, they're not thinking with a commonality state. They're not thinking from a concise level of thinking. They are making a statement based on being coerced. They're being told, they're being instructed on what they should say or how they should say it. They're not speaking freely. They're speaking compromised. How is that legal? How is that responsible? Do we want to get to the conclusion about the circumstances? Do we want to find out what actually happened? Or do we want to condemn an employee and find liability and hold someone accountable more so than getting to the truth? The police department, I believe, gets 72 hours if they shoot somebody to issue a statement. And then when they do issue that statement, they have to do it present with union lawyers and their union reps. Where in TA Surface or MTA Bus or MapStower, if you run into a situation where a loss of life takes place, you are sent back to the depot with 2 supervisors and no rep present to issue a statement that can lead to you potentially going to jail, losing your life, losing your freedom, losing your license, losing your job, and potentially and mostly losing your sanity. This is where we are. I want answers, but I want answers not from the member. I want answers from the people who take coke money and lobby for laws and fight allegedly for our benefits. I want accountability from the mayor's office who approved this law to find out how is it that they can regulate restaurants? How is it they can regulate COVID? How is it they can regulate licenses? How is it they can regulate gun laws and gas prices and toxicity levels in water? But they can't regulate an electric bicycle that goes 45 miles an hour with brakes that don't work. Or that the person operating the bike is even qualified to operate at that speed on a residential street. There's speed bumps on the street, is there not? Don't the speed bumps say slow down to 10 or 15 miles an hour? Does an e-bike slow down? Does an e-bike get a ticket when they run a red light camera? Does an e-bike get a ticket when they blow a speed camera? Does an e-bike have to pay insurance when they crash into a pedestrian crossing the street? Does an e-bike operator have to get their vision checked, their medical checked? Do they need corrective lenses? Are they able to see at night? Do they pay taxes? And how do we know the standard of their tires are the right tread? How do we know they're not operating on bald tires? How do we know any of this? We don't, because nobody mandates it, because it's part of the city's posturing for revenue. So today, a family mourns the loss of their loved one. Today, another family mourns the consequential circumstances of their loved one sitting at home right now, standing in the mirror, wondering what their future will be like. And this cannot continue. More lives will be lost as more bikes come onto the street. Because of this law being passed, they are now emboldened. Now businesses and restaurants are going and buying more of these bikes and hiring more workers to drive these bikes who might not be qualified to operate at that speed on a residential street or around commercial traffic. What is their level of training? Are they wearing bright colors? Do they have reflectives on? Do those bikes have specific lights on them? Absolutely not. They're coloring them. They're painting them with Christmas lights. They're doing whatever they want. They're doing whatever they want. And we have to be the specialist to overcompensate for their illegality. We have to overcompensate for their unprofessionalism. We have to overcompensate for their low standards of operation. It's not how this works. It's not how it's intended to work. We got to get together and figure out a way to force the government, the mayor's office, the city council, and our union. Respect our titles and our licenses and our professional statuses, and give us the tools we need to protect ourselves from what has proven itself to be a very, very dangerous interaction in our city. The e-bikes and New York City buses are a catastrophe that has not been waiting to happen, which has continuously happened and will continuously happen more often, because the e-bike operators, don't respect the rules, because there are no rules for them. The rules are only for us. There are no rules for them. They took the Revel scooters off of the road for a month and a half because people were renting Revel scooters and going up one-way streets, going left, right, doing wheelies on them, driving crazy, causing accidents for 1 month. Why did they take them off the road? Because Revel has insurance. And Revel has liability. And Revel was getting sued for all of the interactions they were getting into. So what did Revel do? Reestablish their business model, change how they were going to rent those vehicles or who would be able to, and they put the liability back and created a new business model because accountability had to take place. And the city put that accountability on Revel. And if you're not sure what Revel is, those are the blue scooters that you can take your credit card and rent one and go and get a helmet out the back. Don't have to have nothing and just go. But they said, okay, well, you have to have a license to rent the Revel now, and you have to have a credit card, and there's accountability there. So it restructured the business model. I think, personally, any restaurant, any person on an e-bike that gets involved in an accident or an incident, whoever that person is working for should be held liable. And maybe they'll take more consideration about how they actually send people out without proper training, without proper vehicles, without proper brakes, and without a working knowledge, or at least some form of insurance to protect the general public from someone who wants to operate in a dangerous manner. So let's say if a restaurant wants to hire people to deliver with e-bikes, then that restaurant's insurance has to be held liable for that e-bike if it crashes into someone crossing the street. If he knocks over my grandmother, that they have to have licenses or badges potentially attached to that restaurant, that they have to specifically work for or have some type, in the same way, maybe like a food vendor, right? How they have their food licenses and they're governed by the Food and Drug Administration, and how they have to have where they park their trucks at has to be regulated and inspected, right? Well, the restaurants or the people who operate e-bikes should have to register themselves with a location, and that location that hires them, in turn, who profits from that, should have licenses or insurances for those people operating within a said hours. If this person does deliveries from 6 to 12, this operator maybe has to pay $50 a week for an insurance policy that covers them in the event they create the hazard. When they get into accidents, are their blood levels tested? Are they drunk? Do they drink and drive? Do they get pulled over by police and given breath analyzers? I mean, they're operating at 45 miles an hour. The speed limit now is 25 miles an hour. They just dropped it down 10 miles an hour. If I'm operating a vehicle at 25 miles an hour, I'm still subject to be pulled over if I seem to be swerving or doing something that seems erratic, and they have the right to test me, especially with my CDL. I'm mandated to give them a breath analyzer test. But a person driving a bike twice as fast as me, twice as fast, where is, at least in a vehicle, you have a broad identifiable marker coming at you with two headlights on it. A bike, an e-bike, is coming at 45 miles an hour in pitch dark. You can't even identify the bike. By the time you don't hear it, you don't see it, it just zooms past you or into you or at you. I'm not going to hold y'all too much because it's Christmas Eve. This was on the top of my mind. This is extremely important. Please say a prayer for the operator. Say a prayer for the family that lost a loved one last night. And say a prayer for the mayor's office, because this is not going to go away. We care enough about our members, even though the union don't. I care enough about my brother, seeing him last night, hysterically crying in a trauma state, filling out a report with nobody sitting next to him to support him. Not one person sitting next to him in the depot to support him. Not one union rep making sure this person was going to get home safe. How did they know this guy wasn't going to go outside, pour a fifth of liquor, and drive himself off of a bridge because his mind was in such of a horrible state? How would you know? How would you know? Oh, I'm sorry. You wouldn't know because you don't care. You don't care. If you really cared the way I cared and the way other members cared, you would stick around and make sure he got home safe. It's not our job. It wasn't political. It was personal. We sat there until 2:30 in the morning and made sure he got home safe. But I guess it's business as usual for the union. Back to business. Wonder if there's a party today to go to that somebody didn't have the time to come out at 2:30 in the morning to support a member involved in a fatality. I'm not going to let y'all off the hook. I'm not going to let this slide. I don't let nothing slide. Because that's how we get into these circumstances in the first place. People have become so complacent to not caring about you, but still taking your dues and still taking your representation for a joke. For a joke. This is the most severe circumstance you can have in buses. There is nothing more severe than that. Nothing. Nothing is more severe than you waking up and coming to work and going home telling you that there's a dead body attached to your name. Nothing is more important than that, which means there is no amount of support that you should receive that can supersede anything. The highest amount of support should be at your beck and call. They should be sleeping at your doorstep right now. They should make sure you've went to the emergency room. You should have an IOD packet filled out. You should not come back to work or answer any other questions until you are psychologically checked out. Because there is no way under those circumstances, anything that came out of your mouth last night should be held up in court. It should be all voided. Because one, you had no union present when you gave those statements at the depot. And two, you gave those statements under a traumatic experience, which means that everything you said is compromised. I'll see y'all on the road. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy your holiday. I don't want to give you this level 10, but sometimes if it's level 10, no matter what the day, no matter what the holiday, no matter what the moment, you got to address it in real time. If it involves someone that dramatically, if it affects someone that, it could be any one of us. Like, we all get out and do our jobs, and any day you can experience some really horrific stuff on this job. And the one thing you hope is that you don't have to protect yourself, or that you don't have to overcompensate when there are things in place to actually keep you safe in those environments. And those systems failed yesterday. And they failed today. I still haven't seen a press conference. I see all over the news. The reason I even did this live is because I see the news and I see the posts on Facebook all over the place, and people basically condemning every bus operator in the course of history, that we are all dangerous and we all contribute to the loss of lives and we operate recklessly and we need to have better checks and balances and we're bullies and bus operators are dangerous to the general public. What? And where's the pushback from the people who are tasked to protect us and push back against these narratives and these lies? Where are the people who are supposed to go in front of the media today and say, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, we are tragic. We are tragically mourning the loss of a 33-year-old's life last night, and we are counseling our member and protecting him because this experience has ruined everyone's life, and we want to get to the root of this problem, which is lack of regulation and safety for everyone across the board. And moving forward, we are challenging the mayor's office to do something to prevent this from ever happening again. You cannot drive a speed bike at 45 miles an hour if you can't operate it in a bike lane, and there has to be some accountability or liability from the people who are sending these people out on the road to do this without any levels of consequence. I'll see y'all later. Merry Christmas. Happy Kwanzaa. And happy holidays. If you don't celebrate, if you just celebrate life, that is a reason enough to either pop a bottle of champagne or apple cider. Whatever your vice is, I say bask in it, because we are in some very, very tough times, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see y'all on the road. Stay safe. Peace.